MeAdi, 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 MeAdi ቤተሰብ ኩላትና ገቢብና ኣብታ ዓባይ መሶብ.
Awesome, yeah, welcome. So we wanted to talk about elections in the Habesha community. Really, I think all of us here are, as far as I know, Eritreans, but we can, I think, extend it to the rest of the Habesha community, both the Ethiopian and Eritrean community, and our involvement in the elections. So really, our involvement in elections and voting and being politically active, way we live here in the United States of America. So I'm going to actually name a few statistics. Yukalo did a little research and came up with some stats that I'm going to share, and I'm going to follow it up with a question to both of you. So there are more than 23 million U.S. immigrants who will be eligible to vote in 2020 presidential election, believe it or not. That making up about 10% of the national overall voters. 61% live in just 5 states: California, New York, Florida, Texas, and New Jersey. Obviously, Washington State is not on there, but I'm sure that's pretty close out there. 2.3 million are Black immigrants, an increase from 7% in 2000 to 10% in 2020. In 2016, overall voter turnout in U.S. citizens was 61.4%. Voter turnout rate increased across racial and ethnic groups, with the exception of Black millennials. The Black voter turnout rate declined for the first time in 20 years in presidential election, falling to 59.6% in 2016, after reaching a record high 66% in 2012. We named these numbers and stats to just kind of give us like a lay of the land and talk about what is at stake. So the question for both of you really is, what's at stake for the Habesha people in the 2020 elections? From where you sit, your opinion?
Well, it's huge. We're talking about immigration, the economy, and pretty much your existence as a minority in this country. So when Biden says the country's soul is on the line, I think that's understatement. So we got to get back to voting. Like they said, the number was down in the last election cycle. We got to get back, and we got to represent everybody and make sure our voice are heard.
This is the most consequential, actually, election in U.S. history, especially the presidential elections. As you know, Biden even says we're fighting for the soul of the United States. It impacts the economy, the foreign policy, the domestic policy, the criminal justice system. What else? Immigration. In all areas, I think, very consequential. Probably it changes the map of the United States. As even the global impact is significant in terms of U.S. intervention policy in the foreign, in terms of economic power, the global mentality of the U.S. Economic muscle across the world. It impacts everything. I think I would probably say even the most consequential elections in the U.S. history.
I agree with you, Sagai. It's the most consequential election in U.S. history. Specifically, though, in like what is at stake for the Habesha community or for as a minority community?
I mean, if I can jump, I mean, if it comes to the Habesha community, I mean, the focus is that I wouldn't exclude the impact of U.S. Presidential elections of the minority in general, excluding Habesha. It's part of the deal. All the policies that's designed by this administration. Let's talk about immigration, for instance. The last 4 years, 3.5 years, the current administration is focusing on limiting the number of green cards. That's the main goal. The number of green card holders should be limited. That's a policy. So what does it mean? People coming here especially to limit the number of minorities. They specifically stating that English speaking is a criteria. What does it mean again? It's just a pure racist policy. I mean, people coming from Europe are welcome. People coming from those parts of the world are not welcome in a way. Another policy in immigration is like the illegal crossings, the border crossing, for instance. Border crossing, most of our people come through border crossing, and then you will not be, based on the current administration policy, you will not be getting any green card. You may get a green card, but citizenship is not allowed if you are coming illegally. Those are at least the two major policies. And the design, I think from my understanding is, it's a race game, because in 30, 40 years, the US population makeup will significantly change. The white community might be a minority. That's a fear. And they were using all kinds of policies to limit that change in demography. Economy, if you come to the economic section again, they will limit access to capital in terms of small business. They will limit, because again, the minimum wage fight is still there. And then the healthcare, of course, everybody knows that Obamacare is going to die if this administration continues. That's for sure. The criminal justice reform, if you can, when people talk about Black Lives Matter, they think that, no, it doesn't matter. No, it does. It does. If you're in the eyes of the majority here, you are Black. Simple as that. You're not Habesha. You can talk about anything, any kind of rights. So whatever the colored people, African American or Asian, all kind of immigrants impacts the Habesha community. So that's my perspective.
Absolutely. I want Abraham to jump in on this as well, and I want to capture something he said, a guy there that was beautifully said, is that this impacts the Habesha community because a lot of us are immigrants, like our family members are immigrants and are working on bringing their family members to the US. And so if you have a government that is actively working to limit the number of people that come here from certain places where their skin color of those people are not white, that's problematic and it directly affects us. Same thing on the economic side, what you said, I think spot on, because most of us are either low income or a little bit above low income. Somewhere in between middle class and low income, and tax policy that's been passed is eventually something that's going to actually create higher taxes for low income and middle class families. And so there's like the impact is like very, very direct if this administration was to continue. Abraham?
Yeah, I think the guy was spot on when he said about the numbers. As far as the race is concerned, I mean, in a couple of decades, you're looking at a white minority, and that is scary. And you could also talk about the politics of it. If they don't have the numbers, the Republican Party can't compete in a national election. The number is not in their favor. So if they could, we call it voter suppression, maintain the numbers, that's part of the game. And then as a minorities, one other thing that we don't talk about is the Supreme Court. I think sometimes we forget how important that is. Now we're going to have another nominee that's going to be part of the court. It's going to be 6-3 conservative advantage, and that's going to be set for decades to come. And when there's a landmark cases that are heard that affects us, that is huge. And because of the last election, they were able to nominate 2 Supreme Court nominees, and that has tipped the court to the right, 6-3. And you're talking about 50-some years old justices that are going to be there at least 30 years. So if this election is lost, there's another chance that they could nominate another another justice. It could go 7-2. That could be another 40, 50 years. I think sometimes we'll forget how important the Supreme Court is and the role it plays. And I think we should actually mention that.
Yeah. So I think usually what people don't realize is how those changes affect their daily lives. I think that's probably the missing part. So, for instance, like the change in a high court, like in the Supreme Court, how does that affect my daily life? That is something that people need to think about. Probably need some information or some advice. Taking that into consideration, how do you see the information, or how Habesha people are informed about elections and their involvement in elections? How do you see that?
You're right. The problem is it's not actually, this is a nationwide issue. It's not only Habeshas. If you look at the people on the right, the evangelicals, they vote based on the courts. We vote based on who's at the White House. We forget about the Supreme Court. We forget about Congress, how important those are. We only talk about the one branch instead of the three branches. Now, your question, it's a good question, but the problem is it's going to take a while, and it's going to take a hard work for us to educate our people about the importance of the three branches of government. It's a serious matter that needs a serious time and it's serious resources. It's not an easy thing. But how do we start? Where do we go? I mean, we have to start from the bottom and build this thing up.
I can tell you two examples, I think,
Sure.
More specifically. I'll try to relate the Supreme Court change or the election there, the appointment there, and the impact of the minorities. The Obamacare policy, the healthcare policy, that's at stake. That's significantly at stake. When we talk about immigration, there are so many levels and sectors. Recently, the Trump administration have been imposing a public charge rule to limit, people's family reunion. A public charge rule is if a family, a low-income family, most Habesha people get government assistance in many forms. Could be school assistance. Sometimes even the law is so confusing. I was trying to read for one presentation. I was trying to read. It's just like it's 85 pages. What public charge includes. Some people are asking, they're afraid that my son is going to school and he's getting lunch, free lunch. Is that public charge? It's so much stressful. So a parent whose kids are, want to join them, or a husband who's waiting for his wife and his kids, couldn't get any assistance or doesn't want to get assistance from government because he's afraid that that public charge rule is going to be against him. And there was a case that they were sending to Supreme Court and still in process. So if this administration continues, I think they would like to approve that, but that's a fight. That's a direct impact. So everything goes around all kinds of rules. Supreme Court changes, all these things we're talking about is going around. So the end game is, well, we want to be the majority. Who's going to be the majority of this great country? So I think that's the game of the probably the political game of the decades. You can say that.
I am curious, though. I think part of the question was like, to what extent is the Habesha community involved? And I think I would love to hear from your point of view, from where you sit. Like, do you see other Habesha people involved in elections and voting? Like, how often do you see that? And like, to what extent is it out there? Because I don't see it often, and it's very rare for me. But I think we're curious from your point of view, like, to what extent are we involved? do you see a lot of us involved? Not, like, to what extent?
I think from my perspective, couple of things. This year is special. We've been, personally, myself, through the church community and different forums, the youth connection that we have, we've been asking to get involved and make impact. To the extent that, in fact, about 3 weeks ago, we had a voters registration drive. We did that. Because of COVID, in fact, we were planning to do that in the church compound, but we couldn't because of the COVID issues. So we've been asking a few volunteers to go to the big apartment that Habesha people lives there, and we did the registrations. So in 2 big places we did that. We were also mentioning in our weekly meetings and through also Sunday church service through Zoom, through Facebook, we've been mentioning that, people has to vote, and we've been telling them the consequences. What the consequences? It's not about them. I'm voting today or this year, not about me. No, it's about my kids. That's their future. I'm not worried about myself. So we've been trying to connect that dots, and their rights are at stake. Their kids' rights are at stake. In fact, the culturally, I think Eritrean community is more involved in terms of elections than I think people think. I've been seeing that the past few years, or even mayor candidates discussion have been done in the Eritrean associations. They do that. Whether that is for the purpose of getting fund from the city, or is it for purpose of educating the people? That's a different perspective. But they're doing that, and Eritreans, by definition, most of us we love politics. We love politics, but I think the ground game is maybe different. Sometimes we are isolating ourselves in an Eritrean island. We create an Eritrean island in the United States. We forgot that we live in this country. So even including myself, sometimes I get too much involved in the Eritrean politics, and then we forgot that I live in this country, and I have to put my share to protect my rights. In the city that I live in Batel, I live in Batel. I try to involve as much as I can to volunteers at least a few times a year there, as much as I can, just for the sake of my rights. So I think overall it's not bad, frankly, as bad as you think. But it might not be visible because we're not doing it in an organized fashion. There's a piecemeal approach here and there. So,
yeah, I know Bradley's has to dip out. Before you dip out, Bradley, do you want to say anything? Thank you, Sagai, by the way. I think that's on point.
I want to add to what Sagai said. He's actually he hit it right in the nail. Come to the ball. بدقني خلص خلاص يا إيرتراوين أب أمريكا نازل لنا نمبر. ناتنا لبنان حسبنا نبي إيرترا يزلوا. بوليتيك كل معاد خمس بالو كلنا أنا إيرتراوي إيرترا يتبعونكم. زع بوليتيك خلنا زارب كلنا بوليتيك زي فوتو زي زارب سبيلنا. جن كل معاد تنزاربوا تزلنا يبوت أرستينا. بدي حرنا زلوا أنا سو هذا حن ناتسلو زلوا مالتي. أبدا عادي مستنا سوماليا نا إثيوبيا نا إيرترا وسخكا أبسياتهم دانا. ساتهم 50 شيء أنا درجة 50 شيء حلو إلى إذا قمنا يسلستيو هاجرات مالتي. إذا سميرو هم زي حدا voting black كوينو سميرو أبكار تستاتف نيرو كل ما عادنا إذا عاد politics أنت مثل كا سوم دليو عند حر تمرش كينكا صاون حمريز كام تناتك ديلت كفوت عمرك حتى دالك سول كان عايز مرز كا يكونن كل ما عاد نمرز كلنا نحنا إذن يدلنا إذن خواهم ندلي إن حتى ما الناس لم مرزنا تبغى الناس لم تين مرزقكم خواهم درخبوا ربحها خنتاع له إن حتى لنا ناتنا مرجعة ويتناتنا فوت كوادرو لومبر ناي حدا ودب كوينا ويناي حدا تسأب حدا بوتا تراس ساتفنا كودا يبلو تناغر يزبل أنا أتنا تمرسجن إحنا أبز عدين ساتفنا حق حيش ساتفنا بون بحدانا تم ناتنا صدرا ناي كانكو حسرة ديو قالوا خون خيل ترى خبانات وتحكينا زلوا ولدها عن شللت الناديو ويس زي ساتف ديو سون درجة ساتفني أتحبر تسبي زلهم برا أتو بوليتيكا ساتفني فجزء كلن نقولنا نقفتا مالتي بندرك أبزربات رازي كونه أبت election ممكن نساتف لنا كنا دليت وين دلنا وين كن حتى لنا سوم كم كده ممزحاتو عادهم مرسو خلو سؤال ما يكون مرسو صح تحت قبل الليها مريض نحرزي تزبلوهم نفس عن زي فصل مرنم كات تتمزل امريكاها حن انفودي مالي كومو تاريخ نصاوت لنا بزحل لنا بزخبابي 10 شيح 10 شيح 5 شيح بزي قدسي بزخون امريكا سعره خلو ب 10 ب 10 غوليز امريكا وددر درجه فللي مالتي او ندعو كوينو نساتف ندعو كوينا سمير انت سمرنا حدث بلصه تزي سمرنا عليت بب تزلناس مرچنا ناتنا دمصخ نسمع لنا بهلاي Thank you.
That was really good. Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hopefully, it was a pleasure. Maybe قال مع تقان واحد بينا نحول. First time تزوجنا.
Yeah. I think زيا مجمرة ترى زيا. نوصل لنا تبغينا. Just like you said.
It was nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
I think Hamza Belkat's a guy, and I think Abraham Lahman Debala. At the end of the day, it's like people might be trying in small pockets. Again, organized today, the impact is much smaller, right? Especially come had a community and if the political people in political power don't see that we're organized, they take us less seriously, right? They're like, oh, yeah, not, we're not going to have much of an impact, but if we are organized, they know we could have an impact. But yeah.
I agree with that. I think, I mean, my assessment is that people do not get involved as much as needed. Probably, I don't know. I mean, I'm new to the country as well, so I don't know much, but from what I have seen so far, it feels like people are not interested or are pessimistic about like the outcome of their votes. It doesn't change anything. Like, that kind of attitude. That's what I understood. But as you said, what needs to happen is that it needs to be more organized, more involvement, because as we said, as all of you have said beautifully, our rights, or the rights of people's rights are at stake. It's not about about one candidate or so. It's about your life, or it's about your children's life in the future. So maybe that underestimation of the effects of an election, we should get rid of that. Who do you think Habesha people, Habeshas, would vote in the coming election, and why?
Prior to Trump, the difference between the two candidates, you have to be very savvy to know the differences in economy. Like, for instance, when Obama and what was the
Mitt Romney
and so on, when they compute, I mean, when it happens at that time, I mean, it's the difference is very small compared to the current comparison. I mean, the presidential debate now, I mean, the presidential policy positions, the change of the direction of the country, it's significant. It's black and white. You're not going, I mean, the last 3 years, America has been changed completely upside down. And think about it. And then if you add another 4 years, you know, there was a book. I forgot the title. It could be that one, but it says, "Nation dies like people. Nation dies like people, like empire states, like, you know, a lot of." So, I mean, this is, if we continue like this, the American superpower and the world position is completely over, done. That's what it is. So any elections in this country is about resource sharing. It's about resource sharing and who's getting more of the pie, and what form. Is it fair? Is it justice? Is justice is treating us equal? Does justice have color? These are the kind of things that are really visible nowadays, and because of that, I think the most Habeshas, I believe most colored people will choose democratic candidates. That's what I think. And you're giving statistics at the beginning in terms of the decline of the Black involvement in the 2016 elections. And I mean, that's proven to be one of the issues of the misinformation campaign that has been happening in this country, and it has a consequence. And I think people are learning. The good news is not only Habesha. I think most of the colored people now are voting in millions and millions. I think yesterday I heard that over 20 million people are voting. It's early voting. That's significant. So there is a promise. There is a hope that I think we may be a chance to see restoration of American pride back, but there is also a big risk. And sometimes, you know, you don't be pessimistic in terms of I don't change my vote. If I vote, I don't make any difference. I only control myself. I only care what I can do. I do, and then the rest will take care of it. I do what's right. So that should be the approach. And in terms of, I mean, combined community, Eritrean community, European community, Horn of Africa, that's idealistic view. Practicality is very tough. Even within Eritrean community, that unity has not been established yet. But there is opportunity. The opportunity is wherever you are, in whatever form, in whatever civic movement you are, be the voice of the voiceless, and do what's right. That's it. And then I think if you lay those grounds, the next generation will take over it and I think organize it beautifully. So that's.
Yeah. Sagai, I definitely agree with your assessment of, I think that probably a lot of us will vote for a Democratic candidate, given what we've seen the last 4 years, and the contrast, right, between the two different parties, and the impact on our lives. But I'm also curious, like, right, on one hand, we have like the Democratic Party, who generally promotes immigration, right? Promotes people coming from multiple different countries, being allowed to stay here, being given like public assistance and so forth and so forth. Right? I believe in public safety and public net safety. And on the other hand, you also have Republicans who are anti-abortion and often anti-gay marriage, right? But also we can have Habesha community members who believe in both, right? Who are anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, but also want their rights as immigrants living in the United States of America protected, right? So how do you think people navigate that dilemma?
I think people learn and people adapt the environment they live in. When Obama administration allowed the equal rights gay marriage, it was a shock to a Habesha community. they were like Obama in terms of many ways, in terms of his policy, Obamacare and so on and so on. But when he started allowing that, they were not happy because it's just against their phase, their traditional values. So they were really in conflicts. Many people telling that I like this president, but I don't like his policy in this area. So if you insert theological beliefs, theological values, or your theological or religious phase into politics, it's becoming now the not a political discussion. It's becoming like a theological discussion, theological comparisons. My phase is better than your phase, kind of thing. So I don't personally as the phase person, I don't believe abortion, if you ask me, but I don't oppose it. People who want to do that because they have their own circumstances and really unique circumstances and that's their rights. So my faith shouldn't preclude or be above their rights. Also, I'm not in support of gay rights because it's not my faith. As a policy, I don't support it. But when it comes to their rights, that's their rights. I don't. So you have to take it as a package. When you allow people equal rights, equal justice, you cannot just split. I like this right, but I don't like this right. It's very hard. So Habesha people are adapting now to the changing environment and the changing coming to generation. But it's always a struggle. I mean, it's always a struggle.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying, Sagai, is that the Habesha community is really smart enough to look at the candidate as a whole, what the candidate brings across many different issues, and not be stuck in one issue or become a one-issue voter, like people like to say. Which I think that's an interesting assessment. Like I'm really curious to hear more from others about that, really specifically, because there are also voters who I know a few who have dedicated themselves to voting for one candidate because of one issue within the Habesha community. And I'm curious about your thoughts about people who do also do that, who are this is the issue I care the most about. Yeah. And hence, I'm going to just stick to voting to this candidate because they believe in this thing that I do.
I think it's more of education. So how do you win your arguments? So if you know that I'm not in support of abortion, why you want to focus on talking about abortion? You know that if you know my position, there is no argument to talk about it. Why don't you focus on the other issues very important to me that educate me? Well, that's the biggest problem, because when people the same issues, the same scenarios that he's telling me when I discuss with the elderly communities in our community here, they tell me that one issue, and I educate them. I educate them that why they do that, why politicians do that. They gave you excess. Well, there were a time where slavery is considered like a right thing to do, because for the safety of the slave, we have to protect for the safety of. So there were arguments like that. So we have to educate them. So we have to educate that this policy is important for this reason. Yeah, you may disagree on this on the package. We have to see as a package. And try to, navigate as much as you can to make your assessment. But if it's easy to focus on one issue. Mm-hmm. It's very easy. So I think it's our responsibility to educate the whole policy network to the extent that impacts their lives.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Saga. It's really interesting when you say that people need to to focus their discussion on the things that they care about, not the things that they hate most. I think that's really brilliant. I think that's I really like that idea. Well, but unfortunately, there are people who are stuck on things that they hate most, and they spend their time like hating other people. Like it's very unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, having that said, though, it's not. I mean, it's not an easy position. It's not a. People need to have like need to like make a conscious decision or conscious choice doing that. But it's also important to mention that when people vote for a package, like for a candidate for a package, it doesn't mean they ascribe to some of the ideas. It's just the majority of their ideas or majority of their position, and not everything. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Actually, I feel like we have a perfect segue here to talk about our next question about the impact of like our nationalities and how we vote, right? I think you kind of hinted on this earlier. Sometimes there are also people who are one-issue voters, right? Who are thinking about where they're from. This, I think, shows up in a lot of immigrant communities, in the Eritrean communities, in the Ethiopian communities, and the current administration or the upcoming administration or whoever candidate's point of view on their homeland, right? What are they going to do over there? How are they going to impact the current government of where I'm from, right? Like, and that's what matters to me the most. But they got two legs here and a house and children living here, right? So how do you, like, what are your thoughts about those people, like, who are like thinking that way and are thinking about how they're going to vote is going to be based on those ideas?
I think it's just purely ignorance, frankly. It's just purely ignorance. U.S. foreign policy, if you're talking about U.S. foreign policy, is based on a permanent interest. They don't have permanent friends. They don't. So as long as you're aligned with their permanent interests, you know, they favor you. But traditionally, at least the past 30 years, the democratic administration is more involved in terms of human rights, global human rights issues. And as opposed to the Republican parties. And then my fellow citizens, they see that as long as, you know, any U.S. government doesn't question the practice of the Eritrean regime back home in terms of human rights abuse and so on, as long as they don't question, they like that. But that's also contrary to my belief that as human, as fellow citizens, why would he support that? Why would he support, you know, why would he question that? They don't know the U.S. policy framework. U.S. policy, as long as they have issues, they don't care. Even Trump administration might change their policy immediately when it comes to their permanent interests. So by voting to Trump, they think that they're protecting Eritrea. No way, you don't. It's better, actually. It's better focus on the practice of, instead of focusing on U.S. foreign policy, which doesn't change by our single vote. I would rather focus on the policy of my government back home in terms of how they treat the people, their citizens, brothers and sisters. I would rather focus on that and deal with that directly. But sooner or later, the U.S. government, Eritrea is just probably the last country they think about, frankly, even the Horn of Africa. The last country they think about. They only care about when when you be out of control, destabilize Horn of Africa, and becomes like impacts their interest. So at the end of the day, it's interest. If it impacts their interest in Ethiopia, if it impacts their interest in Sudan, if you impact interest in the Middle East, then you will be targeted. So when I say this, they're interested about their permanent interest. It's not about nothing else. So I think their perspective is very, very narrow, frankly, and it's just misleading. It's ignorant for me.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the spot there. U.S. foreign policy doesn't change much over time, even with different people in the president's office, right? It is grounded in the idea that the United States of America is going to pursue its self-interest at all costs.
Yep.
Even when there's a facade of human rights facade, or there's a facade of like pursuing economic development in other countries, it's really just a facade.
Yep.
They put on a show so they can pursue an interest. And many nations across the world do the same.
Yep.
And so I think that's something I think part of our conversation here is to also educate and to share. And I think that's something hopefully people will listen to this and realize to say, we do need to look at the Canada as a whole and across multiple different issues instead of focusing on one thing where we think that is important. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think, it's not, there are a lot of nationalities in the US who vote according to their country of origin. I think it's not solely about, Eritreans or Ethiopians. I think there are a lot of other nationalities who do that. I personally think that's wrong. The election is about like American policies, specifically like local or domestic issues are, should weigh more than foreign policy, because we say that, as you said that, I agree that American foreign policy doesn't change that much based on like who's in office. I think people should focus on like what affects them like directly in their domestic issues. As the guy said, I think it's better to, if there are issues, if you're interested in your country of origin, I think it's better to involve directly in your home country or in your country of origin than trying to do it indirectly through your vote in the American elections. I think that's worth saying. I agree with that.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Saga.
There are other ways of influencing the policy. American system is so complicated, and especially the foreign policy is so many ways. It's just a matter of resources. So many lobbying systems that you can do. You can work on it. Doesn't matter. You just have to probe it. Be persistent. Through lobbying system, you can influence starting from your House representative in your state, from the senators. That relationship matters a lot. It gives you a path to the door for the policy making decisions. You just have to be passionate enough, organized enough, and to make sure that it shouldn't be against U.S. policy. It should be consistent with U.S. policy, what you're advocating for. And then through that, you can also, argue your case in many U.S. foreign relations departments within the U.S. House of Representatives. And then through that forums and these state departments, you can influence, you can have a say. Not that directly through votes. The votes are about you here. The votes about here domestic policy mostly. But through foreign policy, as a citizens, you don't have to be Eritrean citizen. You can be an American, American white or African American, black hair, you can advocate that the rights of Eritrean citizens even here through state departments. So the advocacy role, the lobby role, that's the role that I think we can play. Even our citizens on the other side of the political spectrum, they can do that. So,
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So it's usually though. I mean, you touched on it, Sagai. People give more weight to the presidential election and don't really focus on other elections like local elections or like the Senate or House of Representatives and other local elections as well. Why is that, and what do you think about it?
I think, I mean, it's a big prize. I mean, the presidential election is a big prize. It's just like a World Cup. So it's a big prize. So people focus on that, and all the media and so on and so on. It's easier. Local, I mean, there is a state. Even there are people that they don't even know they're state senators. I mean, they don't care. But there are times that you need them. You need them. And then there's House representatives. Within even House representative, maybe you may live in Seattle area. Your House representative may be different from my House representative. I'm in District 4 here. It's completely different. You just have to know their names, what's their policy. You don't know when they help you. Times that it's better to be. I personally, as much as I can, not as much as I wish. I don't have time, but as much as I can, just you contribute. You just put your name there because when you call next time, your name is there in the database, so they will answer your question. There are instances. For instance, I encountered a person has unemployment payment for the COVID unemployment issues. It's getting delayed and for a long time. He didn't get a response, and then I called the House representative in my area, and he instantly emailed me saying that my office is gonna look at it and so on. So I mean, it's you just have to engage, learn the system as much as you can. It's a very complicated system, extremely complicated system. More than that, in fact, for the Habesha community, I wish we have resources, learning, understanding the school district system, helping them. This is a big challenge that we haven't explored. There are so many big gaps that the families, they don't know the complexity of the school district system and how their kids can get help. We run a tutoring program in our church, and through Hope Eritrean Social Service that I run, working with the University of Washington for the past 10 years. We've been working that, and the challenge is when you see a kid is challenged, but you cannot help him because you don't have time. You cannot help everybody.
Right.
So my point is, I don't want to drag the subject a little bit, but we need to understand the system, our local, not only focusing on presidential elections, go back lower to house, and then the city and the mayor, even the school district, who's going to be, the school district director, or so you have to know your school, your kids' high school principal. You have to make sure that you go there, and they need to know your name. They need to pronounce your name. Not only they need to pronounce it. You need to focus on that. And the only way to do that is when they need you volunteers, you show up. You show up. Then when they show up, they respect you. So those are the simple things that we can do as a community. I hope we can do that.
Sagai, I just thank you so much for being here and saying all those things, because those are things I talk about, and Nicolo and I talk about sometimes. I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing there is power, right? Like what is our power, right? Like, what is the respect we receive? Who listens to us? Who thinks about us when they think about the needs of the community, right? And if we're not out there and our face is not out there and we don't know the system, we don't know how power works within the system, we don't know how to then speak up and ask for what we need, right? Ask for what we want. Yeah. I think part of it for me, I think is like, we come here, a lot of us are working really, really hard, maybe multiple jobs, a lot going on. We got children, we got families, and we're surviving, right?
That's right.
And sometimes we're satisfied with that survival, right? Like, we're surviving, we're doing okay, food is on the table, we're sending some money back home. Somebody back home is grateful, or maybe not, depending on. And so, like, we're then satisfied with that life, right? Where we say, okay, I'm doing great. I'm like maskin. Like, we deserve more, right? Like, I think the idea, like, we can start thinking about deserving more. We can, just like everybody else, that we deserve more. We could be more. We could thrive as a community, right? I could own a house. Somebody else could own a house. We could send our children to college, send them to most expensive colleges, and have them afford it, right? Why not, right? Like, we can have our children and not have student loans because we've advocated for policies and we know how to navigate the system, so we can also thrive just like everybody else who's like working to thrive. And so, like, it really makes me think about access to power that we need to really push for. And it takes a lot of work. And I think the fact that we're having this conversation, I feel like is a small seed in the water, or whatever, in the dirt, in the soil, that I hope that it continues to grow.
I completely agree. I mean, I agree. And then our communities, I mean, when I say that, it's not because of the lack of will. It's a lack of access, a lack of knowledge, because they don't have time. And you have to have a priority. I mean, two parents working two jobs, even if they want, they don't have time to do that. So that's understood. But I don't want that behavior to continue from generation to generation. We need to be advocate. We need to be proactive in terms of raising our demands, asking. For instance, I can tell you an example. I've been involved with this COVID. Once COVID is just so predominant, helping the different department of the city. They through a non-profit organization I run. I contact them. They contact me. That's actually, that's not my permanent job. That's not a job. That's just a volunteer. It's not a non-paid job. I'm just doing it. Then I see a lot of translation, for instance, different language translations. I see that, and in many of the city departments, I didn't see Tigrinya, and I specifically demanded it. I don't see there are people who don't speak Amharic and so on. And they need to put in Tigrinya. So they responded, and they asked me first, could you help us? Yeah, okay, I can help you. And then those people, translator who can help, they contact them, they do that. So, and then there are also times they need you. They need you to share information. We create a forum, for instance, when the mayor candidate come in, we had an event, a Taste of Eritrea event in our church. We did that. That Taste of Eritrea event was to make sure that, at least in Northgate area, the focus is not Habesha. The focus is our neighbors, surrounding in our neighbors. They see us with Natsala every Sunday with traditional clothes, people coming back and forth. They see kids coming back and forth. Many years. They haven't seen any incidents of any fighting or and so on. And they are always mentioning that what a community, what a beautiful community this is. And when he did that event, the purpose is, okay, introducing our culture through food. That was the intention. How do we introduce our culture through food? And we invited surrounding zip codes through package of meals. And they came, and the mayor came, and so on. and we try to show them traditions as very non-political, essential event in terms of domestic politics back home. But and then those mayor candidates speak about their position. We give them also a chance to speak about that. So sometimes you have to go a little bit farther. You do events, okay, but just to be bold enough to invite them. You might invite 10 people, but you have to also be organized. It's not an easy job. You have to sacrifice a lot of things, your time, a lot of things. You know how Habesha works. It's a lot of things you have to do that. But luckily, as a community, we're thriving in the north in terms of at least doing those things. So there are instances in the COVID environment, for instance. We try as much as we can. Almost every week we communicate with our community, saying that what kind of resource they can take, what kind of resources available for them, even going apartment by apartment, even sharing them or distributing face masks. We've been doing that, and all this we did that was through volunteers. So once you do that, those kind of things, even the cities and the public officials respect you too as well. Your commitment. So it's a give and take. It's not an easy stuff. I'm telling you that you sacrifice a lot. It's a thankless job, but it has to be done.
Yep, I think these are really, really hopeful things that you just said. It's like really. I mean, as Jonas mentioned, that I mean, most of us are surviving.
Yep.
That there is even like, it's not even surviving. It's not even like, it's a kind of mindset. It's a mindset. So most people are in this mindset, and to get out of that mindset, I think it's important that organizing as a community, as the guy said, that's really powerful. And I hope people will engage in that and get involved and continue to thrive in that way. I really hope to see that. And this is part of that. I mean, what Jonas and I have been trying to do is just do community engagement. People need to engage in exchanging ideas, exchanging experiences, like in a meaningful discussions, give and take. It's part of that, and we hope we'll continue to do that and build something bigger. Related to the election, though, I think it's important to mention that people might not be registered yet. There is time. It's about how many days are left, I think, to go to until the election day. Yeah, I guess 15 days or 16 days. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Washington State dates and deadlines. Online and mail registrations, the deadline is October 26th. October 26th. This is online and mail registrations is October 26th, which is 8 days before the election day. November 3rd, the election day itself, people can go in person and register and vote. That's another thing. So November 3rd is the general election day. I think it's important to people. I mean, for people who might not know those information.
I just got my mailing involved, so yeah,
I got mine as well, and I think I'm gonna sift through and read the pamphlets, and also not only are candidates running, there's also what do you call those? God, I'm blinking on their names. Amendments and such, and like propositions.
A lot of propositions
on the ballot.
and depending on your district. And I think one of the things probably in the voting system is once you open your envelope, you'll find 4 items like this. Just this is the ballots. This is the security envelope, and this is a mailing envelope, and then this is just information. So once they read and select, they just want to make sure that those people, you know, first-time voters, they want to put this the ballot inside the security envelope. They have to do that, and then in some states, if they don't put it that way, they might not accept it. So, and the most important thing is just vote early.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for demonstrating that, because I know I've heard some people not doing it correctly, and sometimes like their ballots misplaced or not counted and such. I'm not sure to what extent or how many people that happens to, but I know that it happens out there. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think we're at the end of our conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Sagai. We appreciate you, and hopefully this is not the last time you're on here. And when COVID is not here, hopefully we can do this in person and continue to foster community engagement and dialogue and conversation, because we might have different opinions. We might live in different places, might have different needs. That doesn't stop us from having conversations and thinking about what our common needs, common interests are, which is how we can really like make our lives even better here in the United States. I know Ricardo and I truly believe that. So
that's right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sagai. Thank you.
All right. Good guy.
Abta abay maso